good? It is an absolute honor and pleasure to be here with you for another edition of Startup Grind. Now, let me ask, how many of you are shockers in the house? Look at us. Home team, home crowd. This is awesome. Well, when I was growing up, again, many of you know I'm a Wichita native. When I was at East High, senior class, we were talking about what college we all were going to go to. And I tell you, at that time, the running conversation around WSU was it was Hillside High. Are you going to Hillside High? How many of you all remember that term? The quote unquote endearment, right? Fast forward to now, Hillside High is gone. It is the Innovation Campus. And tonight we're going to talk to one of the visionaries who helped make it so. Will you please help me welcome Dr. John Bardo? Thank you for being here with us.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
This is awesome. All right, so at Startup Grind, what we do is we get backstories. We're going to talk about the grind. We're going to hear a little bit about your vision. You're going to give us some wise wisdom that we can carry out of this room. Is that okay? All right. Now, Jacob already asked how many of you all have been here before, but now I have one more question so we can kind of fill the room. How many of you all are carrying a dream, carrying a vision that is so big that you don't necessarily know how it's going to be accomplished? You just know it's purposed within you. It's your dream. It's your vision. How many of you all have that? We've got some visionaries in the house. Let's talk about vision. Tell us, first of all, before the vision was born, where were you born? Where are you from?
Okay, I was born in the center of Cincinnati, Ohio. My parents, when I was about 13, moved outside the city, and I grew up next to a farm that raised sheep. So I got to know sheep pretty well. And from there, had the opportunity to go to the University of Cincinnati, Ohio State, University of Southampton, and then I was finishing up my dissertation, and I got a letter from this very weird place, Wichita, Kansas, where they said, we've been looking for somebody in your field for the last 2 years. Would you be willing to apply? And I don't have a job. Why not? So I wrote them. I guess I mailed the letter. Within a week, they phoned me and said, would you come out for an interview? And they offered me $500 more than my next nearest offer. And so I moved to Wichita, Kansas for $500. So,
way to go, Wichita. That's
so there we are.
What were you studying at the time in school?
My undergraduate degree is in economics. And I particularly got really interested in issues around what is called urban and regional economics. It's called economic geography by some people. In my doctoral area, which is sociology, it's called human ecology, which the people at home ec stole when they stopped being home ec. But that's true, by the way. But what that really means is that what I was really interested in was a fundamental question about the distribution of people in space and how that distribution affected what happened. I got very interested in University of Cincinnati, when I was there. Cincinnati is, I think if you've been to that campus, you know where the campus is. It's sort of in the center of the city, not unlike Wichita, like Wichita State, where the downtown is away, but they're kind of in a central area. And right near where I was born, actually. And the city, the poorer people in the city started congregating around the university. And so when the '67 riots occurred, I was undergraduate. And it wasn't just something you saw on television, it was something you lived. And so I was looking at that going, there's got to be a better way for people to live. There's got to be a better way. And so in 1970, I took a job at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, and that's where they train physicians, but it's also the welfare hospital. And on Saturday mornings, I was the person who delivered the IVs and drugs and that sort of stuff to the emergency room. And I saw people who were shot and people who were knifed, and I kept thinking, there's got to be a better way. And that really kind of set everything off.
I was going to ask, how did that impact you to see that just so raw right there?
Yeah, it was part of a series. There's a series of, I give a speech sometimes on kind of the things that impact you that, it's not the big study, it's not the, all the things you think it's going to be. It's sometimes, in my case, very truly, snippets of things that happen. seeing a guy on a stretcher with 3 bullets in him. I still remember that. I mean, that had a huge impact. When I was 8 years old was when they were integrating Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I vividly remember staring at the car radio going, why did those people not want little kids to go to school? I don't get it. I don't understand. I was 8 years old. And so, I mean, those things, vivid. I mean, very vivid. I can still see the car radio, I mean, in my mind's eye. So there are things like that, snippets like that, that impact where you go. And so that I would say, it's kind of that series of snippets that said, wait a minute, this is where you need to be, this is what you need to do.
So you brought that knowledge, those experiences to Wichita. What were you doing when you first came here?
You know,
what was your job?
I had a joint appointment in sociology and urban studies. And a lot of my job was to work with the city of Wichita on trying to solve problems. And so that's what I did. And a lot of times the city of Wichita didn't like my answers. It's like, well, we need to do this. And it's like, well, actually you don't. If you do that, this will happen. No, but we've already decided we're going to do that. You're just wrong. Go away. You know. So we did that kind of a lot. And then the thing wouldn't work. And one of the studies I did was on Napsker Park down here. Same problem, right? Same issue. 35 years later, exactly same set of issues. And there were answers. They just didn't like them.
Now, for some of us who might be newer in the workforce in the room, sometimes when you're in a work position like that, where you have a passion, you have obviously the gifting and intellect to do the work and perform it, but you're met maybe with some resistance. Sometimes it gets discouraging. Were you ever discouraged during that time?
By the hour. I mean, it goes with the territory. If you don't get discouraged, you aren't doing anything. Right?
Did you hear that? Say that again.
I mean, it's just the reality of it, right? And so you go home and you kind of snarl to yourself and, kind of, hike up your trousers and do it again. I mean, it's just, you keep going. But yeah, of course, there's a lot of times where you're not only discouraged, but really disheartened and say, this can't work. And something will happen and you'll be able to move it. So.
You mentioned a term that I just want you to break down just a little bit because it will help explain a little bit more when we go along. Urban studies. Yeah. What is that?
Urban studies has to do with the nature of the people, settlements, economy, community, land use, pollution, whatever deals with the structure of urban areas. That's changed a lot. The knowledge base now is such that we know that urban areas are parts of networks. And so a lot of what you're trying to do is to look at how are things happening within the urban area itself, right? And then how do we take that and look at the network that urban area is part of? And as we understand the network, then how do we magnify the capacities of that urban area to utilize the network of which it's a part?
So I feel like there's a little applied learning going on right now.
Yeah, I-35 is a really big deal. So if you look at shipments out of Wichita of goods, they generally go along the I-35 corridor or overseas. And so if you look at where we've asked the regions to allow us to consider the residents of these other metro areas to be Kansans, they're all places where we ship goods. So they're now, for Wichita State's purposes, there are now 11 million Kansans.
That's very
right. Yeah, changes the conversation, doesn't it?
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Let's talk about changing the conversation. So you had these opportunities early on in Wichita State. What happened next in your career development? What was the next phase?
I had a dean here named Paul Magelli. And I laugh about this because I was 24 years old when I got my doctorate. I liked studying, hated being a student. And so I busted through my master's in a year, my PhD in 2. And then they hired me.
That's
I thought,
amazing.
Well, I kept thinking.
I just want to say that. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I kept thinking, who's stupid enough to hire a 24-year-old? And I walked into a class my first night here, which is not what you asked, but I'll get there. Walked into class my first night here, and I looked around the room and I thought, holy mackerel, there are 50 people in this room, and almost all of them are older than me. And so I raised my hand and I said, okay, I'm 24 years old. How many of you are that age or younger? 10, right? And so I was giving a lecture one time on the Nisai and the internment camps in the United States during World War II. And this one woman goes, Sonny, you don't know what you're talking about. And I looked at her, I said, no, ma'am, doctor. And and the whole rest of the semester, I was Dr. Sonny. So it didn't. So from there, the dean called me and he said, "You need to be a dean." And I said, "Okay, what does the dean do?" And I went home and told my wife, he tells me how to be a dean. I said, "Why, we know what he does with you, but what do a dean do? What do deans really do?" So I went back, "Okay, Paul, what do deans do? I know, what you do with department chairs, but what," and he told me, I said, "Well, that sounds like fun. I'd kind of like to do that." So he helped me get a deanship. I went from there to a vice presidency and there to a chancellor's role, which is the same job as a president in North Carolina. They just call it.
What were some of the influences as you were working at the campus and looking at possibilities? Talk about the climate and the culture that you saw, and also influence about what could make it better.
Wichita State has a cultural tradition that somehow wandered away over the last couple decades. And that cultural tradition is about giving people a leg up, not a handout. And so what I've been trying to do since I got back, and this is home for us, by the way. We have a private home here. When I interviewed, called a friend of mine, actually the guy who took my job when I left, a longtime friend, and I said, "Mark, I'm going to interview with the regents. What do I need to know?" And he said, "Well, John, I don't know the regents, but what I'm hearing is they're going to want to know you're committed." Okay. So I hung up and looked at my wife, and those of you who know my wife, she's very quiet, low key, but she's got a really cool sense of humor. And so she looked at me, and I looked at her and said, "Mark says I need to convince the regents I'm committed." And so she thought about it for a minute. She says, "Well, our burial plots are here. Is that committed enough?" And I actually used that in my interview. So anyway, since coming home, and I really do, when I say coming home, this is not only for the here and now, the hereafter. We're going to be buried near a Freddy's, by the way, just so you know.
He was here.
Anyway, so what we're really trying to do is to return Wichita State to its long-term tradition in modern form. What we're attempting to do is to say, we're about the people. We're about moving this place forward. We're about making sure that every student gets a good education, but we're really about the people that we serve and the people that created the university, the people that sustain the university. And so that's our goal.
Absolutely. In order to return, you had to have left. Where did you go, and what were you doing?
In order to return, I spent. I'm not going to go through all of that. I worked in Australia for a while, and worked in Wales and England for a while, and have done a couple of research trips under NATO to Turkey, and have done kind of a lot of different things. But I started studying this stuff we care about so deeply when I was 19. And so through my meanderings and other jobs, including 17 years in North Carolina, it was about the same set of questions. And so I'd done 16 years as chancellor. I just had had enough of doing it. And UNC Chapel Hill offered me an opportunity to teach. I was going to take it, and then this job opened. And I looked at my wife and I said, "The only place in the world I do this a second time is there." And she said, "Well, go ahead and apply. What the heck?" And 3 months later, I was there. So,
Talk about when you returned and seeing the campus, the opportunity that was there. This is vision. This is where we talk vision.
Right.
What did you see?
It's one of the advantages, and it is a very odd advantage that I have, is I never left the campus. My family's here. My father-in-law is still not only alive, but kicking and taking care of his own yard, his own house, and he's 85 years old, and there's no such thing as a former Marine. He's just an old Marine. And my wife's sister is still here. The other sister will move back to town when she retires. So family is here. So I never really left. And so I was able to watch the development. I came back and gave speeches to REAP and talked in classes and continued to do research on the community. So from my perspective, I just simply came back full time. So I had some sense of what the issues of the community were that you wouldn't have if you were taking a job. Well, I wouldn't have had, so if I were taking a job anywhere.
What were some of the first things that you took, some of the first actions that you took in order to start this wonderful process?
God, this is so funny. I mean, it really is. Mark Glazer is my friend's name, and some of you may have had classes from Mark. I'm sorry if you did. But, no, Mark's a really good buddy, and every time we come back to town, he and I would go off together for a day and just sit and talk. And I laughingly said to him, when we first started this, we'd each buy a pitcher of beer, drink all afternoon, and then now it's a pot of coffee between us. I mean, we're really kind of sad. But my last time that I was here, I didn't even know the job was open, or it's coming open. And I was haranguing Mark about the fact that Wichita State had not built any dormitories since the 60s. And that by the nature of what we were as an institution, what the institution was, that was a huge, huge error. You have to have about 25% of your students living on campus if you're going to really serve the surrounding population, if they would give you that base to work from. So I was haranguing him to a point about that, where he finally said, John, can we talk about something else? I don't have anything to do with that. I'm a professor. I don't have anything to do with housing. So when the Regents called and offered me the job, we were in my sister-in-law's house. I hung up the phone and I looked at my wife and I said, I got the job. Oh no, I have to build the dorms. Absolutely said that. And so really, I mean, it was about, a tenth of a second after I got the job that it was really clear we had to increase the residential population if we were going to do what we needed to do. So I got everybody angry at me by taking the best parking lot on campus and turning it into a 700-person dorm.
We laugh about that, but again, you said there hadn't been any residential buildings on the campus since the 60s. And there's a saying that says systems are set up to get the results that they produce. Who said that you could shake up the system?
What? Sorry?
Who said that you could shake up the system?
Oh, you just get old and you're willing to do it. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I mean, when I was hired, one of the things the Regent said to me was, we already have one KU, we don't need a second one. And I said, well, you know what, if you want me to do a KU, you've hired the wrong guy. This is who I think we are. And when the Regents offered me the job, they said, all those things you think you ought to do them. So, and it wasn't because I knew so much, it was just that I never left Wichita. I mean, it was always home, so you were always back. And so they're right things to do. They just are. And you got your job is when you're sworn that you're going to do them. Your job is to do the right things, and that's what we're trying to do.
So that was your job. How did you get people early on to see the vision?
Boy, that's tough. Like any vision, and there were people who didn't, and there are people that aren't there anymore. I mean, that's just kind of part of it, which is unfortunate. But that's the reality, and so. What you try to do is to simplify the vision to where people can understand. Because this is a very complex model we're implementing, and I liken it to a really complex chess game. And so you got to simplify it because unless you're working with it every day, I mean, you look at it, you see it, but you don't study it all day, every day. You got to real life. And so a lot of what we're trying to do then is like, how do we make this so straightforward that people go, oh, yeah. One of the things that's happened this week, for example, and I'm so thrilled with it, I mean, I can't tell you how excited I am, is that a group of faculty out of arts and sciences came together to propose a cluster hire in Latino and Latino studies, right? And what I'm excited, it's not about the history of Spanish-speaking people coming to the United States. It's about the experience of the people who are here. And the reason I'm excited about it, number one, it's an important topic, but number two, they thought it up. I didn't have anything to do with it. The vice president didn't have anything to do with it. They came forward with it, and it's innovation in the arts and sciences and the way it ought to be happening. And so we're going to try to hire a group of people where we don't specify what disciplines they have to be in. They just have to be in studies. And we're going to hire the 4 or 5 best. Very different, yeah. But that came out of the faculty, and that's what's cool. That's fun.
That's what we can give a hand to that. Not only did you come with a vision and help to get other people to buy into that vision, but you also changed vocabulary. You
Yeah.
worked to assemble a team that helped to change rules
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
regard. Can you talk about what has helped that momentum to carry? What is it inside of you? Let me be more specific. What is it inside of you that helps that momentum to carry as a leader?
Oh, I wish I could answer all of that. Um, I was tested one time by a group of psychologists that were trying to figure out what a test they could test entrepreneurship. And they called me afterwards and said I got the highest score they'd ever seen by anyone who filled out that test. And I thought, oh, well, they don't measure entrepreneurship. I don't know what they're measuring, but it's got to be something else. But I think what it is if you really believe in the vision, if you really believe that what you're doing can make a difference, whether that's creating a new paper towel or trying to change people's lives in terms of possibilities, if you really believe in it, that makes all the difference because of the frustration. So to me, what's made all the difference is my belief that we are doing the right thing for current generations, and by doing so, we will impact generations down the road. So that belief is the driver, and I mean that's just the driver. Um, and so that's yeah, it's got to be in your gut, and it's got to be there every day. Because then it does get frustrating, and you do get upset, and you do get tired. Uh, but at the end of the day, if you can say, "Wait a minute, tomorrow things are going to be better because we've done this," I think that's what matters.
Now, that vision, it sounds great, and that belief, but it hasn't been met, as we've already touched on a little bit, with some opposition, even maybe some misperceptions. I know that there was the controversy with the chapel when renovations were
Right,
trying to be
right.
done. When you wrote a report about trying to explain the innovation campus, there were some references to downtown Wichita and some conversation that might have spurred us to, is WSU trying to take all the resources down there? Or what about downtown Wichita? And even what the Sunflower reported this week about the university and its resources being used for an investigation for a student. There's been all sorts of positives, but also the controversy. How do you push forward through that controversy and those perceptions?
Tell me anything worthwhile that has ever happened in the history of the world that hasn't been controversial. I don't know of anything. And so when you walk in, you got to expect that. And there's always going to be people who want to find fault. That's easy. Finding fault is the simplest thing human beings can do. And if I want to not do something, huh, your shoes, you should have worn different shoes. Not going to have anything to do with you. Right? So you can always find a reason to do that. So the goal at the end of the day is to say, okay, let's listen to what they're saying. Is what they're saying meaningful? No, it's not, or yes, it is. If it is, then it's how do we integrate it? And if it's not, okay, we're going to keep going because it's the right thing to do. And when we started the Innovation Campus, I mean, we really, today I kind of smile at it because it's one of those things. I started going around to various developers in town, and I went to some group meetings, and here's what we're trying to do. And what was the single answer I got over and over and over again?
I think.
Nobody's going to build in that part of town. No one's going to invest in that part of town. Could be true. Could be not true. So we just kept banging until we found actually a person out of Kansas City who said, wow, that's kind of interesting. And then we found some local developers who said, yeah, that might work. And how many of you went out to Raleigh? You saw the big version of what we're trying to do? What do you think? Yeah, it works. It can be done. And you know what? It works best in the location where Wichita State is. All the national data show that you want to be not right in downtown. You want to be in what in my field is called Zone 2, the area of relatively low income, relatively working class homes. That's where you want to be. And if you look around the United States, of the places that have been successful, those tend to be the places that are most successful. And at the end of the day, research universities or research hospitals are the core drivers. And so that's it. That's so we're in the right location with the right mission, good people, and the right tradition. Gosh, you can do a lot with that.
You can do a lot with that. Now, you are in a room full of entrepreneurs, service providers, and partners. I do want to plug the Kansas Small Business Development Center, which is hosted by WSU as an institution. Many of them are here today. We have you, a university president, here talking to entrepreneurs. The question that I must ask is, if you were to put an elevator speech around the Innovation Campus, how would you describe it?
The elevator speech would be what we're attempting to create is a hub for innovative education and the economy that rises, that helps create value for all parts of the population of the Wichita. That's what we're doing. It can't be just for rich people. It can't be just for white people. It's got to be for all elements of Greater Wichita. That's what we're trying to do.
Now, a couple more questions. And remember, you guys, I'm not going to hog all this wonderful time, right? You guys get to tweet questions. Make sure to use the handle and our hashtag. You are wearing not a shocker pin, but on your lapel, you're wearing the Urban League pin. Why did you choose to wear that tonight?
I just accepted the chair of the board of the Urban League. This is my first meeting today. So, yeah. And they gave me this pin for agreeing to be board chair.
When we're in a particular, I'm going to ask this question.
Okay.
Jacob, I'm sorry if this offends anybody. When we're in a climate when racial diversity and inclusion is a talking point in our country right now, how does racial diversity and inclusion and the idea of inclusiveness impact the Innovation Campus and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, it's not just the Innovation Campus, it's the whole campus. So the Innovation Campus, if we're really successful, in about 10 years, no one will remember that it was the Innovation Campus. They'll just call it Wichita State. And so when I'm looking at this, the people that look like me, aside from that, I'm really old and dangly.
Dr. Sonny.
Yeah, well, I said today, when I go to board meetings, I used to be the pretty face. Then I looked in the mirror and it's like, ooh, I got to do something else. So anyway, what we're attempting to do is to find ways to create opportunity for all the peoples. And I'm using the word peoples because it's not any one group. It's everybody who wants the opportunity. So diversity and inclusion to me it's us. It's us. I mean, it's not them. It's us. It's who we are. One of the things we've done is worked for the last couple of years with Jeff Turner, huge partner in us early on, to bring WATC in as a college of the university. And with any luck, if the world goes the way it should, early November, our accrediting body will agree, and they will become the Wichita State University College of Applied Sciences and Technology. Now, why do we do that? Because gosh knows, universities don't teach welding. Why do you want those folks? If you look at the diversity of their student body, and if you look at who chooses to go to WATC, this gives us a way of talking to people about being at Wichita State, and allows us to begin to create relationships and programs, certificates, degrees, badges, whatever they need to help them achieve their goals. And so to me, this was a huge deal. Not just because, oh boy, there's 4,200 students over there. Isn't that great? Our numbers are well. Who cares? The fundamental question at the end of the day is, how do you access the people that need you? And what are the ways in which you can create programs that meet their needs? And the needs of tomorrow aren't the needs of yesterday. I just did I'm writing a paper on a couple of things we're working on. I tend to organize my thoughts by writing. And so I went back and started reading, the history of higher education in the United States. prior to the land grant acts called the Morel Acts in the 1860s, you had to speak both classical Greek and Latin to get into college. And most instruction was done in Latin. Now, why do you think that was so? It excluded those people who had to work for a living. Right? It did. And education was for the very few, and that's not what we are about. So that's all right.
Absolutely love it. Thank you for that. Now, one more question on this end, and then we're going to move forward. And that is, you mentioned downtown in your reports, and just as Wichita has this incredible opportunity to rediscover itself, how do you enter the conversation or even answer questions about the distribution of resources?
Oh, I wrote a 50-page. I write when I need to think, right? I really do. I mean, I've always done that. I just sit down. I'm kind of a scatter thinker. Right, stuff always goes all over the place. And I found when I learned statistics and it was all linear, it would really help me. And so I also found that when you write, you have to be linear. You can't just scatter stuff around. And so when I want to know what I'm really thinking, I sit down and write. So I wrote a 50-page paper 2 summers ago. Tells you a whole lot on right, what I do with my summer. Right, I sit down and write. Some people go to Europe. I'm missing my living room, right. But the 50-page paper was on new visions of economic development that have to do with the distribution of resources. And fundamentally, the old model of economic development was what is known in the vernacular as the buffalo hunt. Right? I go out and I find a business and I give them huge tax breaks and I build them a big building and they stay as long as those tax breaks are there and then they move on somewhere else. And then they, whoever else will give them whoever else we let them be the next buffalo they'll go to. And so what I'm really pushing is a model of economic development where you don't do that. What I'm really pushing is a model of economic development where you say, what are the core issues that allow the whole community to evolve and develop? And those issues are infrastructure, and particularly high-speed electronic infrastructure, capacity in applied research, huge correlation between applied research and GDP of states per capita. There's a lot of good relationship there. And then the third is, what can we do to help stimulate early stage capital? And so what we're trying to do is say, okay, we have 8 clusters of businesses in Wichita that can act as a core structure. So what are the underlying infrastructure needs in terms of internet, in terms of education, in terms of healthcare capacities of various kinds, almost none of which have to do with tax incentives. And if you put those things together right, with a highly qualified workforce, you will get the distribution of economic development you're looking for. You'll get the allocation of resources that help people and that aren't limited to any one group. And that's where we're going.
So tonight you have heard several great opportunities and different strategies to help carry our dream. You mentioned you write a lot. What do you read?
Oh gosh, when I read, I either am doing total nothing to do with the university. I want to sit down and look at something that makes me have fun, and those tend to be English mystery novels, right? I don't get to do that very often. I usually only do that on airplanes. And I love the Bardo series, for example, which is absolutely a goofy series, but it's tremendously fun because it has nothing to do with reality, and it's, I've read most of them 2 or 3 times. But most of the time what I read is anything having to do with the relationship between higher education, technology, economic development, cultural development, community development, and the future. And what drives my wife crazy because if I'll sit there with my computer at night and just reading. So that's what I tend to do.
That speaks to balance too. And then finally for me, what was the best advice that you've received through this process and the best advice you can give this group tonight?
I think, there's no one piece of advice at the end of the day. I guess what I would tell people, believe in what you're doing. Recognize that everything you do that's of value will have opposition. There will always be naysayers. Uh, don't feel like you have to do exactly what you set out to do, because chances are pretty good you won't. I thought the new dormitory was going to be built where Henry is, and you can tell that worked out pretty well. That Henry was right on 17th Street, and your dorm was right in the middle of campus. And it wasn't what we expected, but it was the right thing to do, the right place, and so you change where you're going. But keep, understand what you're trying to accomplish, and keep focused on it, and recognize that a lot of days you're going to go to bed exhausted and really upset, and it's okay. It's just okay. Because at the end of the day, you will break through. The second is fail early and often, right? Because if you aren't failing, you aren't trying. And boy, the number of times in my career I've failed. Anyway, that's the second thing. The third is don't be too hard on yourself. At the end of the day, look, you're going to do the best you can. And sometimes you're going to really do it right, and sometimes you're not. And at the end, when you look in the mirror, you're still you, and it's still okay. So that's the.
I want to thank you so much, not only for the time that you spend here with us tonight answering my questions and our questions, but also thank you for being the person that is really helping assemble a team to make this happen and to change the conversation in our community. I thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
We had a couple questions come in on Twitter, but I'm actually going to go around in the crowd too. So if you have a question after I get done with this first one, raise your hand. First question, this actually comes from Stephen Warner from Lawn Buddy. Stephen, raise your hand. Stephen right here. The question that he has is, what can we do as individuals to really impact change for this city in a positive way?
Oh, that's one of the things that I think is so important, is that every individual, if you will keep talking about what the future of Wichita can be. Lou Heldman will tell you, when I came here the first time, right after I got the job, the downtown Rotary Club asked me to come and speak. And so I started talking, and Lou wasn't working directly for me at the time, and he teased me later. He said, I couldn't understand why a president was talking about economic development. Now I know. But at the end of the day, I started asking the question. I said, how many of you know what an SBIRS TTR is? How many of you know? Raise your hands, right? Now, you're entrepreneurs, and you don't know. That's a problem, right? So part of what I think an individual can do is explain to people what this stuff is, right? An SBIR is a federal grant that will help you get a business started in a technology area that will help drive you forward. And it's not much money in the first tranche, but the second tranche can be enough to get you to public funding, to funding by early stage capital people. So the fact that we are in an entrepreneurial community don't even know that is a real problem. And so that's something you can do, right? You can make that difference. Keep explaining that development has to be for everyone. It's not just about this group or that group. It's all of us. We all got to move forward. And if you can do those things, over time you'll change minds and lives. And so to me, I'm getting pretty passionate about this because I really do believe that one person can do those things. I started talking about SBIRs, and all of a sudden, like, what the heck is that? And it's not as foreign. Some people raised their hands here and heard it and knew what it was. So that's the biggest.
Next question is actually from Matthew Colburn over here. Matthew, raise your hand. Mm-hmm. Matthew asked the question, how did you know you were not too far ahead of your time?
How did I know I wasn't too far ahead of my time? I don't know. You just keep monitoring, right? I think there was a time here when I was here earlier where I couldn't have done what I'm doing now. It would have been impossible. The structure of the economy in Wichita was such that a few large businesses headquartered here controlled the town pretty much. And they're good friends of the university. I'm not saying this in a negative way. It's just they kind of were the ones who were driving the economy. All of those businesses got sold out. And they're now part of national and international chains. Well, they don't really care what we do. As long as they make their profits, as long as they can employ the people they need to employ, They don't get really excited if someone else starts a business. They're used to that. That goes on. And so I think that you try to match what is possible with the environment in which you're located. This could not have happened here 30 years ago. It couldn't. But it can today. And today we've got people, you're all here. Goodness, it tells you it can happen here and it is happening here. So part of it is just the monitoring, knowing what's out there in the environment, understanding the environment. So,
Other question, raise your hand and I will come to you if you got one.
please. That's it.
I always wondered what's your favorite principle of leadership that you got positive influence out of or impact out of it?
My favorite principle of leadership, and I've actually forgotten who said it. I believe it was a Chinese philosopher, and I'm just walking on the name you may know. Tired tonight, so I kind of missed the name. But it's the best leader is that person when others say, I did it myself, and you say you did. Because that means you've gotten people where they need to be, and they can do it themselves. And they're not relying on you anymore to do it. That's why I'm so excited about this cluster hub, because I had nothing to do with it. They did it themselves. So that's one of the big, that's my most important. The second is a statement by Deming that I keep remembering, and it keeps kind of coming back over the top of my head, which is you don't have to change. Survival isn't mandatory. Okay? And so you don't want to change? It's okay. That's how people get out of the gene pool. That's how, but that's how businesses fail. Those two are the ones that I kind of keep dragging forward. And the third one really is people respond to a vision. They don't respond to little things. There is a statement that one of the more important urban planners made many years ago that I think is right. Make no little plans, for they have not the power to stir the hearts of man. And I really believe that's true. That's a sexist language today. At the time, it wasn't. But if you think about it, little plans end up on the shelf. Create a grand vision, explain that vision, try to help continue speaking to the vision, try to include people in the vision so they can understand how they fit. And, one of the big issues we got into early on here was people in many areas of arts and sciences said, well, this is all about engineering. No, it's not. It's all about how do you take what you do and meld it into the future. And that's, again, why I'm so excited about this cluster hub. Didn't have anything to do with it. And it's in arts and sciences. It's right where it needs to be if we're going to move some of these things. So those are the principles I would, other than the traditional one of buy low, sell high. But, but those are the ones that to me to keep driving.
It's kind of it's an observation I'd like your comments on is I'm a lifelong Wichitan, and what I'm seeing out of what you stirred up out of WSU is you're helping us get over our inferiority complex, and the success is rising all boats, and I think was that part of it, or are you seeing that it's just kind of people are going, well, hell, they can do it on Hillside High. I can do it. I mean, it's interesting to observe the community from what you've done.
The inferiority complex here is real. I was here during the Hillside High era. I remember that. Can't go to college, go to Wichita. I remember all of those things. I never felt that way. The colleagues I had here were some of the best people I ever met. And I've been to some big schools. The people in the community were some hard-working, ready to go, do it right kind of people. I never felt that way. But when I came back, somebody said, we're an aw shucks university in an aw shucks town in an aw shucks state. And I said, yeah, well, that's done. That's done. Number one, aw shucks people don't go anywhere. And the meek may inherit the earth, but they aren't going to do it very quickly. And secondly, we're not that place. That's not who we are. We're a really good university in an urban area. We're a really good city. We have a great quality of life. We have wonderful people here. We've got, for the Midwest, our diversity is second to nobody. We've got capacity. We're better than we admitted to ourselves. Let others tear us down, but not us. We're going to carry it forward. That's who we are. And you know, when you start that, people start buying into it because they don't really like feeling bad about themselves. But I can't tell you the number of times that, why are you doing this? We're just Wichita. And the answer is no. We're Wichita. We can do better. We can do this. We can make this happen. Why did we join the American Athletic Conference? Please don't tell Greg this, but I don't care about the basketball. That's not why we did it. I want him to play a really high level of basketball, and I want him to beat everybody in the world. I don't care. I want that. But that's not why I cared about the athletic conference. Think about the other schools in the athletic conference. Well, you're no better than Cincinnati or Houston or Memphis or Dallas? Really? Okay. I'm okay with that for now. That works. Well, you in Orlando. I mean, really? Yeah, isn't that cool? Evansville, Peoria. I like them. They're good places. Don't get me wrong if you're from there. I think they're great. My son's girlfriend's parents are moving to Evansville. I wish them well. It's great. But we're like Houston. We're not like Evansville. We are as a university, like the University of Cincinnati, not like Bradley. Bradley's a great school. I wanted my son to go there. It's just we're not like them. And so that's why we did it. But it's part of this messaging of who are we? We are Wichita. We can do better.
So as a final question that we ask a lot of our presenters at 1 Million Cups is, what can we as a Wichita community do to help you?
You know, the biggest things right now, give us a chance to achieve what we're trying to achieve. Don't judge too fast. It drives me crazy when I see a news item that says, well, they only have 22 people doing this. It's a failure. They thought they were going to have 100. Yeah, that's like saying to LeBron James, you were a failure because at 1 year old you didn't make it into the NBA. Right? We're just experimenting and starting. We're trying. So please, number one, help us when you see us going awry. Let us know. But secondly, don't prejudge that if something doesn't happen the instant you say you're trying it, that it isn't workable. So many of you are entrepreneurs. How many of you were really making your first million within 3 weeks of starting your business? It doesn't happen that way. That's not, and we're moving an institution of 15,000 people to try to do better. So it takes a while. So one of the things you can do as a city and community of Wichita is help people understand that we'll get there. When you talk nationally to people about the Innovation Campus, they're shocked. It's like, well, it's so bland, it's been at it 2 years. Well, we were at NC State. First building didn't happen there for 10 years. 10 years. The Research Triangle Park, y'all heard of that? You know about the Research Triangle Park? Right. Harold Oldham, sociologist, wrote the theory behind the Research Triangle Park the year I was born. It became an overnight success in the 1970s. I was already married and here when it became an overnight success. And so something you can do to help us is help people understand. This is moving at light speed compared to what most other people in the country have ever even thought about, much less done. So that's one thing. Second, we're going to be asking for degree programs. We're going to be asking for Not necessarily money, because the state doesn't have very much right now. Somehow I got selected as one of the 3 people that estimate the tax revenues for the state. I don't know what I did in a past life to deserve this, but I really don't want to do it again. There's, whatever it was I did, please forgive me. I didn't mean it. Anyways, but so help people understand that we will need their support when we go for some of these programs, because there are going to be people who don't necessarily want us to have them or like them. And the third thing at the end of the day is there are going to be people who get upset because they don't want to bid, or they didn't have a really good idea that could come to the campus. And they want to slow you down. Please help them not do that. We think, given what we've seen around the country, that we can become the center of an innovation district, not an innovation campus, not an innovation university, but a whole innovation district that can help drive the future of this community, that can spread the capacity of this community to peoples who never had a chance before. We think we can do that. One of the big doodahs on campus this fall is we created a new form of education called a badge. A badge is a half credit hour course. It has to meet all academic standards. It has to be accreditable, but it's offered for half credit, half a credit at a time. Oh, you're padding enrollment. No, we are serving people who otherwise could never get to the university. We are serving people who can't commit to a 15-week course, and we are providing a basic building block for continuous education that is going to be required as the pace of change continues to build. And there was a piece that came out from one of our higher ed organizations this week that said, use short courses to help yourselves. And it's like, gee, no kid. Now, isn't that a shock, right? But that's why we're doing it. It's not about, ooh, we can get your numbers up. Who cares? The bottom line at the end of the day is, can we get you what you need in a timely manner, where you are, in a way that is transcriptable so that you know that it's there and you can prove you did the work, right? And that we can then build into certificates and maybe even a new kind of master's degree. We don't know where that's going to go yet. Give us the time to figure it out rather than throwing up hands and declaring, oh, it's this. Because it's not any of those things.
A round of applause.